Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. On today's episode, we talk to Ryder Jack all about the different shapes and sizes of masculinity. The key points we touch on are what it means to be a man in 2020, how to develop your emotional muscle, and taking your friendships and relationships to a deeper level. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we have Ryder Jack joining us. He has almost 20 years experience facilitating workshops with boys and men to help foster healthy emotional dialogue, encouraging the conversation of masculinity in today's society. As a father of two boys and as an avid local footballer, Ryder has seen firsthand the positive impact of challenging traditional notions of masculinity and creating environments where men can explore life beyond the stereotype and develop the emotional capacity necessary to deal with situations. Ryder has experience in film and television, working as a producer on ABC's You Can't Ask That, and as well as Hamish and Andy's True Story, and currently spends his time travelling throughout Australia, working in schools, grassroots organisations, prisons, sporting clubs, and universities through his role with Tomorrow Man. Welcome to the show, Ryder.
Good morning.
So Ryder, just to kick off, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how Tomorrow Man came about?
Yeah, sweet. I'm Ryder. I'm 33 years old. I'm a father of two strange, amazing, wonderful little boys. Strange is probably a bit harsh. Yeah, I think all kids are pretty. I got an amazing partner, Sivan. We've been together for 8 years, and I'm a facilitator. So I work for an organisation called Tomorrow Man, which was started by a brilliant, brilliant mind, a guy called Tom Harkin, who basically wanted to do something about the current state of masculinity in Australia. So he wanted to foster environments where men could practice going against the grain of the archaic parts of the male stereotype, so that when men hit crises like we do, they've got the skill set to be able to deal with it. So Tomorrow Man isn't an answer, it's a question. We're pretty lucky. We get to work with thousands and thousands of men each year exploring what does man look like tomorrow, what's working, what's not working. Let's all work it out together.
And how long have you been working with Tomorrow Man?
It's a pretty young organisation. It's only like 3.5 years old. So 3 years. But me and the Toms, who are kind of a part of it, we've known each other since we were 15-year-old little rat bags. So we've all been working together for a really long time, but Tomorrow Man's come about out of kind of necessity over the last few years.
So I guess what was a bit of your journey to finding yourself in this field and finding yourself as a part of Tomorrow Man?
My journey, so I've got like a big journey, so I might focus on just my journey of masculinity. So I've always been a massive extrovert, like ever since I was a little boy. Just my parents always encouraged me to perform, and I watch back on videos of myself when I'm a little kid and it's cringy. I'm like, Jesus, this kid is just full on, like he's so intense and just me. So
you probably would have made it onto the Ellen show.
Yeah, I was obsessed with Macaulay Culkin. What else? I'm trying to think of other things. I was in Neighbours, but I was a baby in Neighbours. I was baby Jamie. So that was Des Clark, the doctor of the 80s, his baby. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So always a big extrovert, but really curious about connecting with people of all sorts. And I've got pretty fun, loose parents still to this day. They go at it pretty hard when they want to have some fun and get loose. But they take me everywhere. So I was meeting all these eclectic, fascinating characters and just connecting with them. So I knew I had a way of connecting with people. But I guess growing up, I went to a Jewish school, and it was a bit of a bubble. And I always felt like I don't know if people fully get me or if I can fully be myself. And I was very unapologetically myself. But I felt like there was more to the world than the community that I was in. And then luckily I got sent to this leadership program that was run by probably the best person I've ever met, this guy called Jim Steins, who was an AFL footballer who did incredible charity work off the field trying to inspire young people to inspire young people. And Jim basically helped steered my potential because I had all this energy and I wasn't necessarily using it for good. I was addicted to getting laughs and banter and that kind of stuff. But as a result, I was hurting a lot of people and I didn't realize I was because everyone was laughing. So through this program, I learned that as a leader, I could either make a room full of people hate each other or a room full of people love each other and unite. And that's when I decided I wanted to use my power for good. I finished school and I wanted to make people feel as special as my parents made me feel and as special as kind of Jim Steins made me feel. My old man is very creative. He's not very traditionally stereotypical. He's I wouldn't say flamboyant, but he's always showed me a lot of range. I've always gotten to see kind of when he's vulnerable and when he's down and when he's up and everything in between. So for me, that was really important that I could help guys kind of do the same. And my parents also made me feel like a rock star. So when I first started working with kind of younger people, there were always those kids in the year level that weren't seen at all. And as a facilitator, I wanted to make them feel like the rock star. So often in high school, there's all these hidden gems. And because they're not kind of following the crowd or being a bit of a sheep, they're misunderstood. And then by the time you get to year 11 and 12, all young people are looking for is individuality and kind of that kind of thing. And those people are finally seen because they're like, that kid always kind of did what he wanted to do and he didn't actually care what people thought. So I was really fascinated about that space of just making people seen, and it just catapulted me into this journey of starting with young people, working into high school kids, and then working in production as well because I was just fascinated with docos and creating spaces where people could be themselves. And and then the last few years started focusing on masculinity in particular because I thought that was my skill set. That I thought I could make the most impact because I've always found that I can put myself in a lot of male environments, even though I'm a bit different, because I'm so unapologetically myself. People might misjudge me at the start and go, who the fuck is this hipster? What the hell would he know about masculinity? But I don't bullshit. And I think people see that straight away. And then they're like, okay, this guy's legit. He's not claiming to know it all, but he will create a space where we can talk about whatever we need.
Yeah, amazing.
Ooh!
So I actually attended one of the Tomorrow Man events earlier in the year, and I guess one of the real standout things for me was a lot of the stats around males and masculinity and I guess around like depression and suicide. But I guess one of the stats which really stood out for me is that 1 in 3 men over 30 aren't satisfied with their relationships.
Yeah. That one's pretty hard. It's hard to fathom, isn't it? Because you're like...
Yeah, it really is.
I love my mates and I love my partner and I love my people. So what that one is basically what happens is when you're in high school, boys especially, you're around your boys, you're hanging out all the time, you're hanging out on the weekends, you're playing after school sport, you're spending heaps and heaps of time. But what tends to happen with boys is as they get older, they're not focusing or fostering those friendships enough. So they might go to uni, they might travel, they're still hanging out with their mates a bit, they might get a job, they might start a family, have a partner, and they'll work, family, and they might go to the pub, they might talk a bit of shit, they're masters of banter, that's all going well, but as they get older, if they hit a crisis point, because they haven't been strengthening those connections, they don't really have any experience to go to their mates going, hey, I'm really struggling. Can we talk about this? Because there's all these myths. My mates will laugh at me. They'll be burdened. They won't be able to handle it. So that's kind of what happens, as opposed to women, I guess, stereotypically, they've been practicing the skill of strengthening connections from a very, very young age. If girls play with dolls, they're learning how to communicate. They're playing mummies and daddies. They're learning how to build relationships. When girls hang out together at lunchtime, they're sitting in a circle. The dialogue is really strong. Boys are usually doing physical exertion or like kicking each other in the nuts or that kind of stuff. And when they chat, it's side by side. So the most at risk of losing connection is kind of 45 and up. I just heard a stat recently that 89 and up is the fastest growing suicide bracket. So basically, these old dudes have spent a lot of their later years just isolating themselves. And it's no wonder that they don't know how to communicate. It's the relationship breakdowns for people. And I think the highest stat is divorce happens once the youngest kid has finished year 12. In those traditional families, a lot of mums are going, I'm out. I'm not looking after anyone anymore. I'm over this. I am done. And those dads are really at risk because of, Nathan, what you mentioned, the not having social connections. So we've got to be really careful and look out for those guys.
Yeah. So there's so many, masculinity stereotypes out there at the moment, and I guess this idea of how to be a man and what you're meant to do and what you're not meant to do. So I guess for you, what does it mean to be a man in 2020 or a man of tomorrow?
Great question. It's not an easy answer. My whole thing that I'm most passionate about and what Tomorrow Man is most passionate about is just flexibility. So don't bash the old school stereotype. It's rampant. It still exists. Little boys are still saying a man is the provider and a man can't cry and that kind of stuff. So even though the tide is changing, it's probably not changing enough. So rather than bashing the old school traits, I think it's just not letting them kind of control you or dictate you. So most guys say you don't cry. It's complete bullshit. Every single male cries. Like it's impossible not to. At some point of his life, he's cried. We need resilience. We need to be stoic. We can't fall apart every day, especially guys out in drought or have been dealing with bushfires or even COVID now. You need to be able to sometimes just keep going. But we know what happens if that's your go-to. If your go-to is suppressing, hiding, escaping, you lose control and shit hits the fan and you harm yourself or harm your people that you care about. So I think a man of tomorrow just needs to be flexible. I love practicing it at my footy club. I'm weird and say I've got a great sense of humor and I know how to kind of use that, but then I also know how to call stuff out and I know how to use a bit of vulnerability at the footy club and show some emotion and just kind of do it. But it's not necessarily easy. It's easy for me because I've just been practicing it and practicing it and practicing it. So we'll probably get into it later in the chat, but it's just kind of the baby steps of how to go against the grain of the stereotype and still feel masculine in doing so.
So I guess what I've found is that it only really takes one person in a group to really start opening up, to start bringing some of that vulnerability to a group. So I guess how do you start doing that? How do you kind of facilitate that?
In a workshop or IRL?
In real life.
Great question. So it can either organically happen or sometimes guys like structure. So we're going to go to the pub. The first hour, boys, we're just going to do a quick check-in. So each guy will get, say, 5 to 10 minutes, talk about everything that's going on in life, good, bad, whatever, just use words. We might then ask some questions. We'll move on to the next guy. Once that's done, let's talk shit, let's talk sport, let's talk whatever we need to talk about. But what ends up happening is that first hour stretches out to 2 hours because guys want to hear that stuff. We can talk about sport or memes or whatever the hell we want till we're blue in the face. But as soon as someone starts being real and getting into some real talk, that's when you get the kind of goosebumps moments or your hairs prick up because you're like, this is raw, this is exciting. So there's that way. But then the other way is just it's hard at the moment, especially in Vic, just with lockdown. But when you're out in nature, camping, that's usually, or surfing or doing something physical or going for a drive, that's often the time where you can initiate those chats and it feels good. At Tomorrow Man, we always reckon that rather than just going up to someone and saying, are you okay? Let me save you. Let me be your hero. Which all guys want to do stereotypically, and it comes from a good place. Don't do that. Just role model the honesty yourself. So just test the waters and go, hey, this is how I'm doing. Me and my partner are arguing a lot and I'm scared and I don't know what's going on. And you talk for a bit. And once you've done that, you've given the person permission to do the same. You're like, well, how are you going? And because you've made yourself a bit vulnerable, it makes it so much easier for the person who you might be concerned about.
Yeah, Ryder, that's definitely something that I've learned with vulnerability, particularly in my friendships, is that it does take that one person to be brave first and to go, okay, we've had this level of friendship and I feel like there's a deeper level of friendship on the other side of a few uncomfortable, awkward conversations that expose a little bit more of, you know, what's really going on, like whether or not it's day to day or things that have happened in your life previously. But yeah, I think once you've, you know, started to open up and share a bit more, then it gives that kind of circle of safety to your mates to then like mirror that back. But it does take that one person to lean in first.
Yeah, I love it. I love that even what you mentioned just about levels. And I think a lot of people, especially men, aren't experiencing the full depth or potential of their friendships. They're really underestimating their mates a lot. And as you said, if you take that little risk to kind of unpack or open something up, your friendship is just going to have so much more flesh and muscle and resilience, so that when you really hit that crisis point, you've tested it out. You know you can go to that person, and they're the better friendships. Like, if you're going through a breakup or if you're going through a mental health issue, jokes and laughter might help short term, but it's not really going to help you. What your friends really need to do is be able to hold space, sit with you during that discomfort. They've had experience of it. It's all good. You'll get through it.
And I think it's not just a like when you're down in the dumps kind of thing. It's also like when you've achieved something really great. It's like you want your mates to really get like how passionate or how excited or how, you know, how hard you work to achieve that awesome thing. So it's like, yeah, that full spectrum of celebrate and commiserate is just better when those relationships are a bit deeper.
I love it. I even, like, I don't know if this is the right example, but so at my footy club, we've kind of broken off into separate teams because we're supposed to play kind of like a mini comp. So we're in our own group, and each day, this wasn't my idea, but each day a player gets nominated and is given these kind of silly questions, and then all the players in the group get to ask questions. And some of my teammates like were asking pretty funny ones, like if you're stuck on an island, would you rather like be able to be intimate with someone or kick a footy with someone? So stuff where you're not really learning much about the person. I used that in very polite terms. So people ask a few silly questions, and then I'm always that guy who asks the kind of deep questions. So I'll ask like, tell me about the first time you fell in love, or what's been a defining moment. And it's so good to have a bit of a balance of those silly questions, and then the guys might start with a bit of a joke to answer the question of being in love, like, oh, when I first saw Dustin Martin run out on the footy field, and then it'll go, no, but me and my partner, we worked together for 2 years and we were crazy about each other, but we didn't know how to say it, and now we've been together for 6 years. So it's just about like, it's not saying like every chat needs to be deep and real and intense. Yeah, Sammy, as you said, it's like celebrating the wins, the losses, and everything in between.
But I think, as you mentioned, it is kind of like a muscle. The more you start having some of these conversations, and so if you can drop them into some activities that you're doing as well, like you said, like in the footy club,
Love it.
You can
Love
sort of
it.
drop some of those things in, then
Yeah,
I guess you can start actually building that muscle and nurturing, I guess, that concept or the...
Yeah, it's just anything like what we say at Tomorrow Man is, it's like how you expected to win a best and fairest if you haven't done any preseason, any conditioning, any training. There's no, like, unless you're an absolute freak, there's no way you're going to win it. So, yeah, what we reckon is, like, what is your grand final? What's your best and fairest? Like, what's going to be that really intense thing that you need to prepare for? And we don't know what's going to happen with life. We don't know how long this COVID thing's going to go for. It's going to go beyond 2020. So people need to kind of be prepared, and they need to pick up the phone and just call their people.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I've got a girlfriend who recently set herself a little goal that she wanted to have more of those phone chats, and, like, you know, we would see each other in groups and stuff, and it would sometimes that conversation be a bit, more top level and a bit more, I guess, logistics, like, you know, what's been going on, what have you been up to, but it doesn't get to that, like, a bit deeper thing. And she made this challenge for herself that she was going to, call her mates more regularly. But she was like, I feel so awkward about it. She's like, I just don't know how to have the conversation that I want to have. Like, I'm willing, I'm just not sure how to do it. So do you have any...
Yes, love it. This is my bread and butter. I love this stuff. Your mate sounds like a legend, kind of, first off. She's not...
She is.
It's just putting a little bit of structure into her questions. So rather than her first question going like, hey, Sammy, how are you? Could you tell me about the biggest challenge of your life? That's not going to work. That's awkward. That's like, who the hell are you? She just needs to kind of chip away a little bit. So kind of the first tip I said earlier, role model a bit of honesty herself. So maybe talk a little bit about how she's going, but then just putting some structure into her questions of easing in. So like, how are you? How's your partner? Or how's your family? Or that kind of stuff. The first question you give someone needs to be a question they can't fail at. So if it's a question and you guys would know this conducting interviews, you want to kind of ease them into the conversation. So as long as she's kind of just chipping away and comes up with her own little plan of, maybe start with talking about external people like your family and then get a little bit more internal. I think that would be the way. And keeping it to a time frame maybe.
So I guess if we're in a relationship where someone isn't opening up, like, is there any tips or like, how do you create a space for vulnerability and that space for being a bit more open?
I think it's patience and it's not forcing someone into it. Like I need to be careful sometimes where I'm like, sometimes I might lose compassion where I'm just like, what the hell? It's not that easy. Like tell your dad you love him. Like it's not that hard. And for a lot of people, it's really, really, really hard. Like, and especially guys, often they need to have like 6 beers before they can start being vulnerable or going, I love you, mate. So I think it's like, if I'm going to speak from a male perspective, we're quite intuitive. So we can follow our gut when our mates are off. But if we bombard them, they're going to shut down because men are experts at being able to shut down. So I think it's just being patient and just chipping away and not putting them under too much pressure and just being really understanding. Or if you don't understand, just trying to. And I think not being judgmental. So not telling someone, get over it, you'll be fine, your life's fine. Like those kind of like assumptions are really harmful if someone is going through a bit of a time. So I think it's just about just being really patient and going in for the long haul and just, as I said, just chipping away. I can think of one mate in particular, I won't share his name, but he's had some pretty intense things with his mental health. And it's only been in the last like year or so that he's started opening up about it. And we just do baby steps. And each time I find out more and more and our friendship gets stronger and stronger and vice versa. So I just say don't expect it to happen in the first conversation.
So coming, I guess, from a romantic relationship angle.
I wanted to talk about my partner. I thought we were going to talk about like my whole thing at the moment is me and my partner trying to get full equity in our relationship. So she kind of does everything and she's taking a lot of the mental load. And even though I'm such an active dad and when I'm not working, I'm doing everything I can around the house, she made a really good point last week. She was like, we both work 4 days a week, so we both got the kids on our own special day. And she's like, on your day off with the boys, you're playing games, you're going outside, you're doing all this fun stuff. On my day off with the boys, I'm buying them clothes, I'm getting them immunised, I'm like doing all this other stuff that I was like, shit, I wouldn't even know how to do that. So our whole thing at the moment is just me trying to support her more with the kind of mental load. But for someone like
also having that awareness as well that what's going on.
Or even like when I get home from a trip where I've been running these intense like workshops and guys are opening up about all this stuff and I get home and I'm completely drained, my tank is empty and I think, I need to recover. I've reprogrammed myself to go, she's been doing, her mental load is as intense as mine. She's been working, looking after these boys, running the house. That's been a huge learning for both of us.
In romantic relationships, if there's someone who's having difficulties opening up and you can see that there's something going on there for them, how do you help create a space within your relationship to facilitate those conversations? Okay, within
a romantic relationship. I would say like routine. So for instance, we've got a stupid tradition, not a stupid tradition, we've got a tradition on a birthday where it's like, what have you learned? What's been the highlight and what's something you want for next year? So that's something we do on a birthday, but why not do something like that one night a week or 2 nights a week or that kind of stuff? So I think if you make it a
structured check-in.
Yeah, exactly. Some people have a weekly calendar, and it's like kids drop off all this stuff and it's like put in there like the chat or that kind of thing, or just stuff around putting yourself into each other's shoes, like switching roles. I think being able to see what the other person does and that can kind of help. But with the dialogue stuff, it's a real tricky one because if the guy isn't opening up to his mates, if he's not opening up to his partner, he needs to see someone. He needs to find someone, or he needs to call men's line or a confidential number or that kind of thing. Because if he's not talking, the relationship isn't going to last. Like, the divorce rate in this country is horrific, and men aren't preparing themselves for these relationships. A lot of men get defensive when they hear the stuff that's being reflected back to them. It's really hard to digest. Like, I'm in the midst of it, hearing, like, I think I'm such a great dad and such a great partner, but when my partner tells me what's not great about me or what I'm not doing well, my first instinct is like, I want to run. But then once I kind of breathe it in and try to like see what's beneath the heat, that's when I really learn, and that's when I really grow. So it's not an easy fix, but if you want your relationship to survive, and if you don't want to be that lonely, cranky, defensive old guy who's all by himself and no one wants anything to do with him, you're going to need to learn to talk in your relationship.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah, just scare tactics. Yeah, if you want to be alone and die, then don't talk to your partner.
Yeah. Hey, I want to skip back, Ryder, to your own relationship. You mentioned that obviously you've got your beautiful partner and got these two great kids together. I'd love to know, what is it that the two of you do to keep your relationship fueled up?
Yeah, so our relationship is it's a work in progress. So we're definitely, we've been together for 8 years. We're polar opposite people. We've got some common values. Like, we've both got a pretty weird sense of humor. And we both really value family and loyalty and that kind of stuff. But besides that, we're just so different. She holds space really well. I take space really well. So we really appreciate and respect those differences. What works for us is making sure our lives aren't 100% intertwined. So space and distance is really important. Often before COVID, when we're socializing, we're not doing every single thing together because we're spending most of our time together anyway. So she'll hang out with her friends, I'll hang out with my friends, and then we'll combine, and we don't mind the combination, but make sure that it's not, like if we were to go away to a festival together, we're not both hanging out at the festival because it's like, let's get loose.
Let's be separate.
Yeah, let's be separate. Let's
be away from each other for a minute.
So that's one part. Space is one part. We really actively tell each other like what we think about each other and how much we love each other. We've been dancing more. That's a really good COVID activity to do with your partner and family. Like, dancing. And then we're learning how to argue better. So I'm not an easy person to live with. I'm very confrontational. I'm very say what I think, because at work my filter's super strong. I need to have a lot of self-control. So when I'm done, my engine's going real hard. So I just say whatever the hell I want when I get home. So it's being aware of each other's patterns. It's being aware of our relationship pattern. Now that we know our pattern and we fall into it, we're able to call it out going, I'm doing that thing where I think that I'm putting all the effort in and you're and we'll name it, and then that's when we're able to kind of step away from it. But something I think is really important is finding out from your partner, how did you grow up and what were your parents or your guardians or your step-parents, what were they like? And once you discover that, I've discovered it recently, my parents fought all the time. They had the most passionate relationship. They'd make up, but they'd fight, and it was crazy. So that's what I've seen. I've seen when you're...
That was your normal.
That was my normal. When you're in a conflict, you're going to say whatever you can to make that person feel so small, and then you're going to be overwhelmed with guilt, and then you're going to do everything in your power to make it up to that person. So that's, as you said, Sammy, that was my normal. My partner, her parents were these workhorses who never fought or argued in front of their kids. They were raising 5 kids, and that's just not the way that they operated. So that's a deadly combination, my style and her style coming together. And for the first few years when we first started arguing, it was scary. It was a disaster because it was just two opposite ends of the spectrum. So now that we're aware of that and we're aware of what's formed our patterns and our behaviors, it's quicker now and it's easier to fix. And I can go, okay, she needs space right now. And I might feel really guilty with what I've said, but if I don't give her that space, it's not going to work. So I need to suck up my pride, suck up my ego, and give her that space. And as a result of both of us making those compromises, now she's not sitting in that space for so much longer, and I'm not saying horrible shit because I'm going, well, I don't need to say that because I don't actually mean it, and I'm only saying it to make myself feel better. So, I think I completely went off track. You were asking how to stay romantic. That's not romantic.
But I think that's
at all.
part of it. Yeah, the reality is that, like, there is going to be confrontation. Like, you know, when you're two individual human beings with different upbringings and different values and different ways that you see the world, like, there's going to be conflict. And I think Nathan and I have done quite a bit of work on, like, having constructive conflict and calling what was the argument or confrontation really about. Like, you know, when you did that or didn't do that, for me, it meant this, or this is how I experienced that. And I know that when we went through that sort of evolution of growth for our conflicts, like, our repair got so much faster. It didn't linger. It didn't have this energy that would stay around for periods of time. It was like when it was done, it was done. Because
you're actually repairing the root cause rather than repairing.
That's incredible. That's it. That's it. And it's not easy to work it out, but I think it's like, as you guys said, sometimes Sivan and I go, what are we actually saying here? It's not all the heat. It's not all the fire. I think, okay, it's saying you feel unseen and I feel unseen. So we're actually both feeling the same thing. We're both not getting what we want. We can work with that.
Yeah, but I liked what you said there about, like, identifying the pattern and then figuring out the interrupt.
The pattern thing is really, 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 really important, because what happens is the pattern comes up. They don't know how to deal with it. They break up. They go into their next relationship. That pattern keeps coming and keeps coming. So if you're not able to work the pattern out, it's not going away. It's just going to get more and more ingrained and embedded in you.
Hey, Ryder, this has been awesome. What I would love to know is, what is one tip for just people, not just guys, to help practice that vulnerability muscle, I guess, at a daily level?
Start with telling people what they mean to you. The amount of guys who I've spoken to who haven't told their dads, or I mentioned it earlier, that I love you. Maybe for you, the first step is I love you is too scary. It's too hard. Try a text message. So maybe text your old man and go, hey, mate, thinking about you, and I just want you to know I look up to you. So that could be just something where it's like it's a text. It's not that confrontational. And then try to work your way up there. Like, what would that feel like on a phone call, having that conversation? Well, you've done the text. It went well. He said, oh, that's a bit weird, but thank you. So then you try it on the phone, and then obviously face-to-face is a bit in cahoots at the moment, but then that kind of thing. So it's just like, I think I'd start from like the vulnerability of love or support. Telling your mates, boys, girls, whatever, everything in between, all the other genders. But I think the small wins of telling people what they mean to you. And then from there, that's when you can, once you've had some experience of that, I'm all about just calling out like stuff that goes against my values at the moment. So people being racist, transphobic, homophobic, any of that kind of stuff. I've just gotten into the habit of stepping into that, and it's scary and my heart's racing. I'm like, oh, people are going to hate me and that kind of stuff. But that's the kind of point I've gotten to through stepping into those conversations. Another really good one to kind of practice your emotional muscle is talking to strangers. Safely. So just practicing the dialogue, which is scary for a lot of people. And there's something vulnerable about talking to a stranger because you don't know them. You don't know if they're going to tell you to go piss off or that kind of thing. So I think it's just, keep going into baby steps. And it's just like, as we were talking about with a gym session, you're not going to start on the heaviest weight. You're going to work your way up to it.
Yeah, no, I like that. Because, tell people what they mean to you and then practice those awkward conversations with strangers. I love it.
It's
There's
like
no risk.
most people,
if it goes badly,
most people, if you tell them a compliment, aren't going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Like I can almost guarantee that they might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you're probably feeling a lot more uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thanks so much for being on the show, Ryder. One of our fundamental beliefs at Fuel Collective is to be the change. And what that really means is that you yourself can be the change that you want to see in the world. So to thank you for being on the show, we've provided a primary school student in Indonesia a week of classroom education. So this will help improve female literacy rates in Borneo. Many of the parents only send their boys to receive higher education after primary school.
That's such good news.
Thank you so much for helping us do that.
Thank you, guys. Just love your passion and love how you guys are exploring your relationship and trying to kind of help others, and not just with relationships, obviously with incredible, important charity work as well. So thanks for making my Thursday less boring.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us.
So if people have loved what you've been talking about today and want to learn a bit more, how should they do that?
Go to tomorrowman.com.au. You can find us on all the socials, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. We capture all the stories of the amazing men that we work with. And we run virtual workshops and face-to-face workshops depending on what state you're in. So come along to a workshop. Virtually, it's so easy. You just do it from home and you'll definitely get something out of it and meet amazing, incredible people and hear a bit of their stories. Super fun night. And then we've got Tomorrow Woman, which is our sister, our sister business.
Yeah.
Tomorrow Woman is doing similar stuff to us, going around the country, chatting to women about the current state of femininity or womanhood. One of their messages is be brave, not perfect. The expectations, Sammy, as you know a lot more than me, of being a female are super confusing, contradictory, impossible. It's like be smart, but don't be too smart. Be assertive, but don't be a bitch. It's really, really confusing, just like the rules of guys. So, go to tomorrowwoman.com.au if you're female or identify as female and want to find out more about that.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us a space to support what you do, because I think it's such an important conversation for us to all be having about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and how is that evolving. Thank you for having the conversation with us.
Gender is so heated at the moment and it's evolving rapidly, and people need the space just to pause for a second and just go, how do I feel about it? So thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.